So Tuesday, don't miss the continuation of that conversation. But it's time for us to receive our next guest. He is Silas Achu. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, you're an author and the organizer of the Manhood Conference.
Yes.
I just love that. When I saw Manhood Conference, I was like, men talking to men, this is beautiful. Was that the idea behind it?
Yes, the idea was for men talking to men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, it came out of observation. We have women events, empowerment conferences, and seminars, workshops, and gatherings. But then we have people complaining about the issues in society that are caused by men. In fact, if you've been to the prison,
Mm-hmm.
you realize about 90% of the population are men.
Yeah.
And if you do the statistics about those who are dealing with drug abuse, 90%, most of them are men.
Yes.
So it's clear that men have a serious issue, have a problem, and there's something needs to be done about it. And part of that just has to be just the way some men have been brought up. The way men have not gone through a training process. And you look at the society, we don't have many events for men.
True.
It's almost an assumption that men already have things figured out.
Yes.
So, but that's a big lie. And
my assumption is that men are too vulnerable to talk about each other. Is that true?
It's more of an upbringing thing. You know, when you're in a stereotype where it's assumed that men don't talk, men don't feel, men don't cry, men don't do those things. They're all lies. And when you live a life for long, it actually affects you.
Yeah.
Because it's not you, it's not real, and so it's like suppressing a trauma without dealing with it. It doesn't go away. It just deals with you and makes you even worse.
Especially men who want to show they're stronger than their underlying traumas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And it can blow out at any moment at the wrong time and stuff like that. So we saw the need to have a conversation around issues that have to do with men.
Okay.
From when they're born to when they are old.
All right.
How do you grow a man? How do you mentor a man? How do you take a man from childhood to adulthood? What are the different stages of a man's growth? Because a man starts as a child, grows as a teenager, becomes a young man, becomes an adult, and then becomes an old person. All of that process, all of that growth doesn't happen automatically. In fact, you have people who are aging, but they are not maturing as men.
I agree.
And so we felt the need to have that conversation. Like, what should a young man be doing between the age of 7 and 18? Or what is really happening in the young man's life?
Yeah, those are questions that we don't usually ask or answer.
Yeah.
So what was the age range of the participants?
The age range was from, I would say, between 18 to 30, 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you touched at least the major parts of their lives.
Yeah.
And were they open enough to talk?
Oh yeah, it was interesting to find men come together in an environment where they are listening to things being talked about men. In the beginning, you see men just sitting down and like, okay, what are they talking about? Let's
Sizing the space. Yes.
And then as the conversation went on, as the conference went on, and we have the speakers really sharing, and then when we opened up for questions and answers, and people began asking questions. And
now I am interested, like all the other women watching right now. What are some of the issues these men raised?
Quite a lot. For example, you have a case of a young man who is actually married now, has family, but he's still dealing with issues from his childhood. For example, he probably saw how his dad behaved, how his dad treated the mom, and he wasn't happy about it. Maybe the dad was abusive towards the mom and all of that. Now he's married, and he's decided that he doesn't want to be that kind of a man. That's what he's vowed in his heart, that he doesn't want to be that kind of a man. But unbeknownst to him, he's actually becoming the same person.
Okay.
Now they're wondering, why is that happening? You say you don't want to be like your dad, but
Yes.
you're actually behaving like him.
Yes.
So part of this conference was to help them deal with childhood pains and wounds and traumas.
Yes.
Because some they didn't know that that's something they needed to deal with.
Yeah.
They just felt like I will just grow up and I'll be something else. But you can't just be something else. Something happened to you as a child.
You were exposed to something.
You were exposed to something. You need
Yes.
to acknowledge it. You need to accept that it affected you.
Yes.
It got you broken. Because if you don't accept that you're broken, how do you get fixed?
That's true.
You can't just move on as if nothing happened to you. So that's people realize that, oh, I didn't realize that there's certain things in my childhood I needed to deal with. So some of them had to now go through a process of forgiveness, forgiving their dads for the fact that they give them a wrong impression about who a man should be.
Yes.
Because without that forgiveness, no matter what you do, you will produce the same thing that you're bitter about.
Ah, that's true.
So those are some of the things we're dealing with, like bitter root judgment. Once you pass a judgment on someone for what they did, you are actually opening yourself up to repeat the same thing.
And part of your objectives was to point out the false and erroneous mindsets about masculinity.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you address concerning this?
Yeah, some of the false ideas or mindset about masculinity is, for example, you have people who feel there's this concept about self-made men. I've heard that. So sometimes men pride themselves with being self-made, like I did it on my own. I walked through life. I was hardworking. I did everything through my own. Now that's a wrong mindset, because any man who sees himself like a self-made man is an orphan.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Because every man needs another man to mentor them and grow them.
Okay.
So for you to move from one stage of manhood to another of maturity, you need a man, a father figure. You need a community of men who introduces you, who train you, who mentor you into different phases of men. So you can't be a self-made man, because if you feel like you're self-made, what happens is that you feel like anyone who comes into your life, or anybody who tries to maybe critique or try to tell something that you're not doing, or tell you that you're not doing something right, you feel they're attacking you, because in your mind you're thinking, who are you to talk to me?
Yes.
You see,
there's that arrogance.
You become arrogant.
Yes.
You see, and so it becomes something like, who are you to tell me that what I'm doing is right or wrong? I got here all by myself. But that's a problem, because that concept of self-made men is an aspect of, it's like an orphan spirit. You're someone who feels like you never had a father.
Yes.
And you need to deal with that. It's a brokenness in you. It's nothing of pride.
I love that. I love that you're pointing that out, especially the importance of mentorship.
Yes.
That self-made spirit makes you feel like you can do it on your own, and that's a lie.
That's a lie.
Okay. And then finally, let's talk about men, identity and purpose. What did you point out concerning that?
Yes, talking about the identity of a man, one of the things that we spoke about was the fact that part of the role of the male, that the man in society, is to actually confer identity.
Okay.
Okay. But how do you confer identity if you yourself don't know who you are? So you have people who do not know who they are, and so we had to bring them back to the place of understanding that you're not what you do, you're who you are. God created you as a man for a purpose. There's an aspect of the Godhead that He wants you to portray.
Yeah.
And you need to accept that. You need to know that your role as a man is to confer identity, is to confer protection. You bring identity, you bring protection, you bring stability. One of the role of a man is to bring stability. And the stability is not for yourself. It's for the community, because like the theme for the event was raising men, building communities. All the role of men in society, in the family, is that they provide stability, provide an environment where everyone can thrive. Right? Yeah. If you notice in a home, once the man doesn't do his role, it's
dysfunctional.
It's dysfunctional, because that's the role of men. And it's not something. And as a man, you need to know that.
Yes.
Not just for your family, but for your society, because you need to realize that if there's an imbalance in society, the men are not doing your role, because they are not providing the stability, the security, the identity that is needed within their community.
So what is the man's role?
The man's role.
Yes. What's the man's role?
The man's role is what I just said.
Yes.
Right? So as the role of the man in society is, like I said, to provide protection, to provide identity, and to provide security. I
wanted you to say that to wrap up, because it's really important. There's so many men who may get lost in all of those words, but those things are important. Once you understand what you're supposed to do, then you can be a useful addition to your community, and you can stand out as an individual. Wow, Silas, thank you so much for making the journey to come here and tell us about the Manhood Conference.
Yeah.
When is the next edition?
The next edition it will come next year.
Yeah.
Same time. We had it in March this year, so we expect it to happen again next year in March.
But before then, is there any way people can reach out for mentorship, other men?
Yes, after the conference, we created an online community on WhatsApp and on Telegram where people could join, so could continue the conversations. So if anyone is watching and want to be part of the community, they can get to me. I can add them to the group for men, where the things that we shared in the conference have been uploaded there. You can listen to them if you have more questions. So we have a community we're building where people can come and have conversations around these things.
And did these men talk about women at any point in time, or were you only talking about men?
Well, we spoke about women in the conference more in terms of what we as men are supposed to do with women, our role, which is to provide that just the same things I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we also spoke about the aspect of abuse. The fact that in society we hear a lot about men abusing women, your wives and stuff like that. And those are some of the false identities that we have to deal with. Angry men.
Yeah.
Part of the issues we have with men are angry men. And some people are angry, but they don't even know they're angry until they are triggered. So we have to help them deal with the fact that there are certain things in your child. For example, a man who was at a young age didn't have the chance to be a child. Maybe you lost the dad at a very early age.
He lost out on his childhood.
He lost out on his childhood, and so he had this lot of responsibilities that were conferred upon him when it was not his time. When he becomes old, he doesn't know how to be a child again because he lost that part. It has broken him, and they get angry because they feel like they
lost an aspect of their lives. I can see the production manager here is just signaling that it's time for us to wrap up, but I'm sure you get the idea.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself as a man in order to treat other people better.
Yeah.
So thanks again for sharing these nuggets of wisdom with us. And this is how we saw it this week. Hopefully you had an entertaining time, but most importantly, you were inspired by all of our guests. A reminder, Ma Ayera's story is definitely going to come up next week, Tuesday. Till then, have a lovely weekend. Cheers.